One of the early games in tactical shooter genre is Delta Force. Now, if you're not familiar with tactical shooters, I'll remind you of some. Rainbow Six, Ghost Recon, and probably the Operation games. It was big back in the 90s and the early 20s, and Delta Force was definitely one of the biggest games in this genre, which helped populate the genre more and more. So grandpas, today we're gonna talk about the first 3 Delta Force games, with the third one expansion pack. Ready? You're not ready, just hold. Anyway, I'm not that old, I'm 20, but Delta Force was my early childhood games, so this is special to me. Even if it got 0 views, I don't really care. Okay, Morgan Freemans, let's deep into Delta Force 1. So this game was released in 1998 for the PC, and it was actually the first or one of the early games which introduced long distance shooting. Yeah, this was big back in the day, and in all honesty, I freaking agree. It's very normal in this game you fight someone over 100 meters away or 200 meters away, even without the sniper. So the campaign includes 40 different missions in 5 different regions: Peru, Chad, Indonesia, Uzbekistan, and Novaya Zelaya. This one, Russian Tundra, all of which give a different environment. So Beirut is pretty much green, grass and stuff. You should touch them, by the way. Chad is a desert. Trust me, I'm Arab, I know. Indonesia is, well, all over the place. And Novaya is snow. Now, as for the core gameplay, it's pretty much a tactical shooter, so you want to be pretty careful about your approach to the objectives, which are normally eliminate all the enemies at a certain objective, or rescue the hostages, or retrieve a computer or a bomb. Pretty basic, pretty simple. And as for retrieving the bomb, I'm Arab, so yeah, I know. And as for retrieving the laptop or the data to remove a war you have committed, you know. But in all honesty, this game is freaking addictive in terms of the gameplay. Like, if you're careful, there is no bullshit in this game. And while there is some minor difficulties here and there, but overall, the gameplay is hot, is fresh. Even in today's standards, it's tense. Like, every time I play this game, it's not that I get paranoia, but definitely I'll have to be more careful than I ever have been in other video games, which is definitely a strong point for this game. A well-deserved name for a tactical shooter. There are different guns you can use, which is the M16 and 2 snipers, and the LMG and the SMG. Now, the guns are bullshit in this game. Pretty much there is 1 or 2 guns you're gonna use all of the game, which is the sniper rifle or the heavy sniper rifle and the M16. The rest is just ignore it. Like, the SMG is just close range and very inaccurate. The LMG doesn't have scope, and many of the missions requires a very long distance. And the problem by using these guns, you're gonna be in a close range, which is not something I advise in this game. Because you only can take 1 or 2 shots before dying in this game. Yeah, it's tough. But anyway, the M16 and the sniper are definitely the highlight here and very addictive to play with. Sniping enemies from afar in this game doesn't seem less satisfying. Most likely you'll be fighting enemies, but sometimes the game gives you the chance to fight helicopters and or cars. There aren't many missions which is out of the typical, like killing enemies or securing a place, but there are some convoys which you want to protect, and that's about it about the objectives and the core gameplay. Now, is there a story? Unfortunately not, unless you want to read this. Souls fans, fuck you. But it actually captures the military info that you're gonna get, which is, as for the name, Delta Force. So it's just military through and through, which I don't have a problem with. Now, is there room for improvement? Definitely. The graphics isn't that good, even in their time. Like, I know this game introduced long distance fighting, but it's actually not that impressive, because most of the times you're not gonna be able to see the enemies from far. They're just gonna be small black dots. And no, that's not racist, which will definitely be an issue since many of the missions are crowded with enemies, especially in the late game, which I don't understand why the game does it. There's obviously some minor problems that doesn't really affect the game that much, but sometimes the game forces you to fight in close quarters, which is annoying in this game and unbearable. And the game runs surprisingly well for an old game. Like, I crashed like 3 or 4 times only. And perhaps one of the most important issues in this game, which are sometimes the enemies inside buildings or tents, are almost impossible to kill since they have a very small window to shoot from and you simply cannot see them clearly, which is a feature that will be fixed in another game. Anyway, that's it about Delta Force 1. I really like this game and I'm addicted to it, and I have finished it in like 1 day. It's short, it doesn't take much, it's easy, and I say pick it up even nowadays. I'll give this game 8 out of 10. So now it's time to talk about the sequel, or the first sequel, which is Delta Force 2. The mechanics of the game are just simply better, 100 times better. The game feel and play better. And finally you can burn and turn down buildings and tents. Now, in order for you to understand what I'm saying, I'm talking only about the campaign in this video. I understand Delta Force 2 has a huge impact on all multiplayer games back in the day, and I understand how revolutionary the multiplayer was. But as for the campaign, this is by far one of the weakest links in this series. So in a typical fashion, the 90s games, the sequel went overpower the original game. Please watch my Tomb Raider 2 video. I talked about this issue in details. Anyway, so the game went overpower the first game, which basically means do everything bigger and more massive than the original one. And so it did. But with it came many issues. The game is not as polished as the first one. So I'm talking about basically glitches. Oh my god, there are many glitches in this game, and I don't know if that's only the Steam version. I haven't tried the GOG version or the CD one. But as for the Steam version, it has many glitches. And it's very normal for you to play 10 or 15 minutes in a mission and then the enemy just shoots you from behind the wall and you die. Which is the issue with the AI, I guess, because once you are targeted by an enemy, even if you hide behind the wall, he will just keep tracking you. And you might say that's unfair. Well, yeah, it is unfair. Not only that, the sequel is much harder than the first one, and it doesn't even try to be fair. And sometimes enemies are just placed in the most inconvenient places. And this is the worst one out of all. There's a mission I have played for 40 minutes only for it to just glitch, because the captain here taking a world tour around the map. I wanna kill myself. And let's talk about the biggest issue here. The hinds. Oh my god, they are so annoying. It's very normal in this game for you to fight a hind. So even if you are 10 minutes into the mission, expect the game to just throw a hand at you and then you'll just die like that. And there's not much you can do here because, okay, in the first game, if you fight a hind, there's probably enough cover for you to maneuver around. But in this one, there is almost no cover. You have to fight the hind in open field. Yeah, I wonder who has the advantage here. And this will lead to endless unfair deaths in this game. And one of the issues as well is in this game it heavily influences close quarters fighting. So you'll be fighting enemies in a much closer distance than the first one, which is very annoying and problematic. Why? Well, because Delta Force in this engine doesn't really fit fighting in close quarters, since you are 1 or 2 shots away from death almost always. So that's for the issues. As for the good things, well, this game is simply diversified, since you can almost fight everywhere. Snow, desert, boats, it really doesn't matter in this game. The mission design is simply just superior to the first one by a long shot, and that actually carried the game, because if it's not for the mission design and not for this video, I would have dropped this game a long time ago. And not only that, the gear is expanded upon as well. Now you can pick up an armor which will take you 1 or 2 shots more before you die. And of course, the graphics is now much better since the engine slightly improved. And I know this video about the campaign only, but the multiplayer for this game is revolutionary. Like, it was a huge back in the day, and that's why this is perhaps one of the most fun Delta Force experience multiplayer has ever been. Yeah, it was that big. It influenced many games actually, at least to adapt some of its features. There is a campaign which contains like 25 missions, and there are of course quick missions, which basically are the same. Like, they take the same amount of time almost always. And of course there is the mission editor, which was huge for this game. And with that many missions, the game did become kinda repetitive, and this and the many issues I mentioned earlier made Delta Force 2 campaign a chore to play, at least now. Much inferior to the first game, but the mission design was promising and the graphics only went forward. Took me 10.5 hours to finish this game, which is almost 2 times and a half more than the first game. I'll give this game a 6 out of 10. Now, since the mission design is more difficult now in Delta Force series more than ever, so the series needed something to just lower it a little bit, or a feature to just handle the difficulty. And here comes Delta Force Land Warrior. Now it's finally time for my personal favorite, which is Land Warrior. Now, Land Warrior is pretty much everything you want from a sequel, which is fix everything of the previous games plus add some more. But let's talk about what's new first. Heard that, Call of Duty? Now you have operatives instead of just regular soldiers. So there are 6 different operators, and each of which has different ability and stuff. Adds to the value, at least just a little bit. But it's not really effective in the single player. It's mostly for the multiplayer. And plus, if you select someone, the rest might come and help you throughout the missions. So that was cool. Now you can't mission select unless you finish the game first. So the story will be in order. I thought that was cool as well. Even though it doesn't affect much, since most of the missions you're gonna just collect documents and stuff. And the graphics is perhaps one of the biggest improvements here. So now the game uses mostly 3D models, and this really helped a lot with the visibility. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the voxels, which will let the draw distance be huge, but let's be real, 3D is 3D, and this game uses it a lot, which really helped. And now finally, almost all the enemies are displayed in your map and minimap, so where it spawns and getting shot out of nowhere is a thing of the past. The biggest thing is the save system, finally, what Delta Force 2 needed the most. Destroying vehicles and equipment with the gun guns is now back from Delta Force 1. Finally, I don't know why Delta Force 2 removed it, such a weird direction. This plus tremendous of new guns. These are the main things which has improved or came back in Delta Force Land Warrior. Obviously there are a lot of minor upgrades here and there, but we're not gonna mention them. So, as for the story, it has a little bit more of a story than the previous games, which, let's be real, had none. And the characters have a little bit of dialogue here and there, which was very welcome since these games needed it at that point.
King 6's gas can. I found the crash site, but there's only 2 bodies. I don't see our guy.
The gameplay is a mix between Delta Force 1 and 2, and it does bring some new things from other games. Mostly the missions are your typical Delta Force collect documents, eliminate hostiles, rescue hostages type of shit. But here is better and more fun than ever. Now, is the game perfect? Delta Force Land Warrior is definitely more fun than perfect, hence why you can save anywhere you want, anytime you want, with maximum ammunition. And to be honest, in Delta Force Land Warrior, the series started a little bit to fatigue on me, which wasn't a thing in Delta Force 1 and 2, and that's mainly because the series wanna just stay as it is. And though Land Warrior is the best one yet, at least in doing what Delta Force 1 and 2 did, but now it's 2000 and the games start to innovate and be more different and has special element to them, and Delta Force didn't seem to evolve that much, to be honest. This fetch quest of a mission design like destroying equipment, eliminate all hostiles, video games start to ditch it in the year 2000, but Land Warrior seems to disagree. Although I have finished the Land Warrior in one session only, yeah, can you imagine that? It pains me to say this is more of the same, only improved version, which wasn't enough, to be honest. But if you're a fan of Delta Force series and you're itching for something new, try Land Warrior. This is definitely a welcomed entry in the series, and it will probably not leave you disappointed. Took me 4 hours and 14 minutes to finish, and I'll give this game 7.3 out of 10. And the point 3 only because I want to be special. And the only reason it's below Delta Force 1 because it didn't innovate. Delta Force wasn't the best game ever, but it did bring many things to video games, especially in the tactical genre. So that's it about Land Warrior. Now that we have a loyal fanbase at our hands, it was only about time for the cow to get milked. Seriously, this years have seen better days. Because what the f is this? Delta Force Task Force Dagger is a standalone expansion pack of Delta Force Land Warrior. Came to you by Zombie Studio this time and not No Logic, which are the same developers for So the Video Games 1 and 2 and the World War II games. Yeah, that doesn't look promising. Where do we even begin? This is a Delta Force saying no to change for the better and somehow became worse than every other game on the market and in the series. So many things wrong with the game. This game takes place in Afghanistan after the war in 2001 with Task Force Daggers operatives. Just like in Land Warrior, the hero style came back again with 26 missions. Not a single mission stands out in this game, all of which are very poorly designed CI game style of design missions, like capture or collect the documents, clear this, clear that. Yeah, you get the point. Simply a fetch quest again, a cheap one I might add, and somehow in Afghanistan they speak Arabic, and what the f is this Arabic? I can forgive you for screwing Arabic up on Delta Force 1 and 2 and Land Warrior, but making a whole new game about a certain place and get the language wrong is just lazy. Simply the mission design is repeated throughout the whole game. I call it Death Stranding because this game gives Death Stranding a run for its money by making you run so long. Not only that, but the AI is the worst thing here and probably one of the worst games I have ever played. The design sometimes can be confusing with finding hidden documents in a Tomb Raider style. Seriously, Lara didn't die for this shit. And the guns are the worst with some huge recoil. Like, look at that. Why would I use that? And this game gives you almost no friendlies. Even the devs knew not to bore the other operatives with this stupid game. Simply skip it. And if you have a CD of it, just burn it. Absolutely terrible. Absolutely one of the worst games I have ever played. Probably the worst one, actually. Took me 3 hours and 42 minutes to finish, and it was painful. I'll give this game a 2 out of 10. So that was it about the Delta Force series. Now many of these games I have played for the first time, like Land Warrior and Task Force Dagger. I have played Delta Force 2 back in the day, but it was only brief. I have finished like 5 missions or something. And I have played and finished Delta Force 1 back in the day. Seriously, with all its flaws, I love Delta Force series, even the extreme games. It sure has seen better days, but now with the release of the new Delta Force game, I hope the series may come back because it deserves one. So that was it. That video was hard to make, so if you enjoyed it, just leave a like and comment. What was your first experience in the Delta Force series? Was it new? Was it back in the day? Tell me. I love talking about these games. If you people like it, I might just make a Delta Force Block Hog Down video and Extreme video and the new one, of course. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.